The European Commission has stayed relatively quiet on this. We heard from Maros Sefcovic, who's the Brexit negotiator in the European Commission, last week saying that any unilateral action on the protocol would be totally unacceptable. And today in Brussels, we've got a meeting of EU foreign ministers, and the Irish foreign minister, Simon Coveney, has been here. And I think he really sort of at the moment is speaking on behalf of the rest of the European Union countries. Everybody's looking to the Irish for guidance on this, essentially. And he was quite conciliatory. He said that while any sort of legislation against the protocol would be unacceptable, he sort of was calling for the EU and the UK to sit down together again, to negotiate, to start having these discussions around it. He even accepted that parts of the protocol simply aren't working and that they do need to be resolved. And I think that's really what is happening from the Brussels side. It's a bit of a wait and see at the moment. We understand Boris Johnson's going to make this big announcement tomorrow. But from what I'm hearing, most of this announcement is going to be actually a bit of sort of buying time rather than actually tabling any serious legislation to change the protocol that would then cause some big effects and big reactions here in Brussels in the EU.
Big effects, indeed. And in many ways, people think that Boris Johnson, Jack, is trying to call Brussels bluff in the sense that they know that if they suspend parts of the protocol about the border and the Irish Sea, that in theory, actually Brussels won't then impose those checks on the Irish border because of the deal and the sensitivities around this. Is that the sense in Brussels, that Boris Johnson in some ways is taking a gamble, but a gamble that he knows in the end the EU is not likely to fold on this idea that they would then start imposing these checks elsewhere?
Yeah, well, this is the big gamble, isn't it, essentially, Darren? You know this well as well. The sort of discussions over Brexit, over the trade deal and the withdrawal agreement was seen from an EU perspective. They sort of sat tight and waited for the UK to perhaps build up the tension and the pressure to push into the officials here in Brussels to see if they would react. And we all know that the EU, under no circumstances, wants a hard border on the border of Ireland, on the island of Ireland, and that they're probably unwilling to go that far. The question is, if there is legislation tabled, what happens in the European Union then? Do they start imposing targeted trade tariffs? That would be tantamount to a trade war, obviously, and that would be a big issue from an EU side. And it would also then start to raise questions about EU division, because they would have to do some sort of targeted measures. Would they put measures on cars? Who would that affect? The Germans, would they be happy about that? And how would they start negotiating them? Frankly, Darren, outside of Brussels, in the EU capitals, many of the leaders are not interested in getting into this kind of discussion at the moment, especially with the war in Ukraine going on in the east.
Well, just finally on that, because this is what I was going to ask you next, has the war in Ukraine made a difference here, Jack? Has there a sense, and we've seen, the response from Eastern European states in particular, but also that agreement last week with Sweden and Finland, that the UK is taking somewhat of a lead in all of this. And then in the end, there's a feeling that there are actually bigger issues at play here, i.e. there's a war in Europe.
This is exactly it. Simon Coveney, on the way into this foreign ministers meeting, he said, these issues seem minor in comparison to the Ukraine-Russia war at the moment. And I think that is the sense. There's been very little appetite among any of the leaders of the European Union to enter back into this fray, enter back into renegotiating any parts of the Brexit deal, especially the Northern Ireland Protocol, which was so sensitively, from their point of view, agreed to and was seen as the resolution, and the UK signed up to it and accepted it. They saw it as a done deal. With everything going on in Ukraine now, there's a feeling that they just do not want to get into this fray, get into these battles again, when they've got so many refugees coming over the border into some of the Eastern European countries. There's a lot of money going in there. There's battles over the Germans, obviously not supplying the Ukrainians with weapons, how they deal with the energy after Russia cut off the energy taps to Poland and Bulgaria. There's so much more going on that European countries want to deal with. But having said that, they obviously still don't want this concern if there was any, persistent trouble in Northern Ireland, specifically regarding understanding that Northern Ireland does need an executive for this all to function properly.